I get in.
Before I press recording progress, I'm going to be off camera just for a little bit. I haven't had a chance to have lunch yet.
No worries. I have my lunchbox sitting to the side. I'll have it after I'm done. We had just 5 people had indicated that they were interested in attending today. So we're not going to wait a terrible amount of time, but I'll give them just a few minutes to get caught in. Are you working from your office, Anne, or is that a home office? It's beautiful wherever it is.
It's a Zoom background. I am in my office. My office is not this well coordinated. So yes, no, it's just.
I was going to say that looks like such a beautiful, serene place to be while you're working.
Yeah, no, it would be. It would be if I was there. It would absolutely be. You don't want to see the place I'm actually in. So yeah, I'm here actually on behalf of San Andreas Regional Center just to gather information, and then I'll report back to others here.
Right.
What
yeah.
is.
And that's why we had asked Miguel at the San Diego Regional Center to share with us I'm losing all my English. The people who hold his position.
Colleagues.
Agencies, yes.
Colleagues,
thank you. Just the information. I know he had sent the information about the opportunity to have funding kind of to accept POSs from other regional centers. And my thought is that you guys probably have a lot of things that cross your desk and a lot of things that you don't have a lot of detail about. So an opportunity to provide some explanation would be a good thing. So I reached out to pretty much everybody that he had indicated he had sent the information to. So I thank you both very much for having the interest enough to come today and learn a little bit more about the program. It's 1:04. I'm going to give it one more minute and then I'm just going to start diving in. I don't have a tremendously detailed presentation outline. My husband said, "Are you going to have a PowerPoint?" And I said, "No, I'm just going to wing it and talk about the program." It's something that I have been doing for 16 years. I've spoken to parents, I've done resource events, I've spoken to unit meetings. I feel like I have this down. But since we did a program design and a program redesign in September, there are some nuances and some changes that have actually made it possible for us to offer this throughout the state. And I wanted to speak specifically to those changes and how we are seeing them improve actually the effectiveness of the program. And it is 1:05, so I will dive in. So the Life Planning Workshop Series is, as I said, it's a program that Home of Guiding Hands has been operating for 16 years. It is a workshop series designed to help families think about what would happen and how to put into place the safeguards to make sure that if 20 years from now, they are not the ones providing care and support for their child with developmental disabilities, they have the peace of mind knowing that the right information is being provided to the right people. So the quality of life for their child is not going to suffer. Initially, the program was developed primarily for aging parents who had not considered future caregivers and were kind of in a time crunch. We operated that program with that specific age range for just 1 year, because after the first year, I said, this is wonderful material, but why should parents wait to think about this until they have a health crisis? It would be so much more beneficial if families started to get this information and start to think about these things at a much younger age. So our primary demographic in San Diego is actually those that are transition age. From about 17 to 23 is the primary demographic that registers for the program. These are families that are looking over the cliff of adult services. They're getting ready to graduate from high school. They're coming up upon age 18 where they lose their legal authority to make decisions for their children. And there's a lot of concern among families in those situations. So the Life Planning Workshop is actually done in 2 to 2.5 hour meetings every other week for the course of 10 weeks. And through that time frame, we take in each workshop a specific subject and really concentrate and focus on that topic. And because it is done in a small family group, all of the parents who are attending are there with the same concerns. So we talk about the safe space. We really deal with emotion in the first workshop, the barriers that keep them from being able to move forward with their planning, the challenges they face, the lack of resources, the overwhelmed feeling they get, the lack of time, the lack of energy, the specific challenges they may have with their diagnosis, and that kind of impact on what they see as their options. Families generally, I won't say 100%, but about 90 to 92% of the families cry during that first workshop because it is very emotional. But because they have that opportunity to kind of process that together in that safe space and then think about it for a couple of weeks before they have to come back and face it again, we find that from that point, they can move forward really effectively in kind of taking out the overwhelmed angst feeling and really focusing on the process. So from the initial kind of why is it so important to plan and what's been getting in your way initial meeting, we then start focusing on skills and abilities, build a foundation of recognition of interests and comfort environments and necessary supports and the most effective ways to interact with the child and how to document all of that. Through the course of the workshop series, families get a life planning document that they complete as homework between the classes. In 16 years, I have had exactly 2 parents complete the entire document during the course of the workshop. There are generally going to be gaps, and I explain to families that that's okay. A gap just means that they've identified an area that they should focus on and look to improve resources in that area. It's not anything that I collect. I talk to families about the uses of the document, that they can have a master copy, but then share abridged versions with healthcare professionals, with service providers, with their case manager at regional center, with extended family members, whoever they identify as their appropriate audience for the material. So as they start noting during the activities that we do in the workshops, they start to kind of reframe how they expect to share information. What are the key points to share? So often during the initial introductions in the first workshop, families just kind of introduce themselves and they state the name of their child and their diagnosis. And that's their initial introduction. And getting them to step away from that kind of clinical mindset and focus on, I have this wonderful child who loves video games and is always ready with a joke and has a smile that lights up the room, and having them focus on those skills and abilities is really a turning point for a lot of families. And during that same session, we start looking at their network of resources. What kind of options do they have in their community, in their service delivery system, with friends, with relatives, and do a really clear assessment of that group of people. And almost to a person, they're never happy with how many connections they have. So in the third workshop, we talked about building new connections, finding the time, creating the opportunities to not just meet new people, but meet new people in environments where their child is going to be accepted as a peer because they share a common interest, or where their child is going to be well received because they are in their comfort zone and they're presenting the best version of themselves to people that are meeting them for the first time. That's critical to really growing relationships and growing opportunities for increased support. So we do spend some time talking about that. And then in our fourth workshop, we talk about living options, and I just give information about all of the opportunities and options and what needs to be considered, even for families that have quite a bit of extended family and a cultural background that indicates that that's going to be the pool of people who are going to take that future caregiving responsibility. There are still things to consider as far as personality and environment and just expectations and how much conversation has actually taken place. Is it just the kind of, it's understood that their brother's going to step into this role? When was the last time you talked to the brother about that? Does he live within 100 miles of you right now? Does he started his own family? Are you sure that that's still the plan? And it's just an opportunity for families to really examine and think about and start to determine a path for their desired future. And then in our final workshop, we do talk about more of the legal issues. We discuss things like conservatorship, supported decision-making, alternatives to conservatorship. We talk about special needs trusts versus able accounts and the difference and distinction and family opportunities and how that might work. And then following the fifth workshop, I also schedule an individual meeting with each family where outside of that small group environment where they may not feel comfortable sharing specific details, they have an opportunity to sit down with me and I offer them the option to meet in San Diego in their home or come to my office or meet electronically. And certainly for someone, I'm not going to fly to San Bernardino for a 2-hour meeting. So I would anticipate that those meetings would be held electronically, but it's still a one-to-one conversation where I can have them circle back to things that they had questions about during the workshops, where they can kind of identify what they see as their desired future. And we can work together to identify the next action step that's going to move them in that direction. It's really something that I have had families of children of all ages. Right now, I have groups that have children as young as 6 alongside sisters of clients that are in their 70s. And they're participating with the same materials, but it is really designed to help families think deeply about where their priorities lie. What are their critical pieces? And the opportunity is to figure out what is non-negotiable for my child in the services, in the environment, in the interactions. And once they have that criteria established through this process of really carefully considering all of the opportunities, it becomes so much easier and less overwhelming for them when new programs are offered, when old programs stop existing, when they face big changes like graduating from high school and moving into completely different delivery service systems. All of that is just so helpful for them to have the criteria and not feel like every new phone call is another crisis. And so many families that come into the program are operating from that crisis moment. I saw a chat fly by. The meetings are held in live electronic Zoom meetings like this, and I do record them. And this has been an unexpected benefit of doing them electronically. When we did the program redesign, I said, the only benefit, one of the few benefits from the pandemic, is that people are much more comfortable with electronic meetings. And one of our biggest stumbling blocks traditionally with the program had been finding enough families that were in the right place mentally and emotionally to participate in the program at the same time to justify having a group where there could be good discussion. So doing it electronically, it doesn't matter if I have families that are hundreds of miles apart, they can still attend the electronic meeting together. So we record each meeting, and at the end of the meeting, I send that recording to the participating families. So if they want to share an explanation or a conversation with an extended family member, what many parents are doing is they're reluctant to have their child sit through a 2.5 hour Zoom in front of the computer. They may not have the attention span for that. They're also really concerned about what other families might say that could trigger their child during that conversation. So it's helpful for them to know that the recording is being done, so they will get the recording and they can fast forward to the 10 minutes that they want their child to watch and then start a conversation and solicit their participation. We clearly and emphatically identify that you are planning with your child and family member, not just for them, that there are ways to elicit their input regardless of their ability to communicate. If you are a parent, you know your child's nonverbal communication signals. You know what a certain expression means. You know when, the body language changes, that's a tender topic. That's how you identify preferences. That's how you solicit input. You are very alert to what environments seem to be very relaxing. What are the environments where they're like bouncing around and you know that they can't wait to get out of there, and where do they just sit back and calm down and relax? That distinction can be enough to identify what creates a comfortable environment when you're talking about bringing in and explaining and training future caregivers. And one of the big things that we talk about is a barrier that most families experience, not knowing who they're going to trust with the future care of their child. Like, who can I ask to do this? And we state pretty firmly, you're not going to find somebody. There's not one person that can do it. So it's a wonderful opportunity to start thinking about creating a team of people, all of whom will have a specific area of responsibility, and together they will make sure that the quality of life for your child never suffers. So who do you know that has wonderful financial background that could be in charge of being payee and monitor the benefits? Do you have a retired nurse who might be able to, assist with doctor's appointments and make sure that medications are handled appropriately? Do you have an extended family member that's happy to open their home, and you are very comfortable with that, but you would never want them to be in charge of the money? And, that has kept you from having the conversation with them about moving to the home, But now that you're not thinking about they have to be able to do it all, it opens more doors. And that in and of itself, many families have identified that that was just an eye-opening moment that made them rethink everything that they had concerns about for that future planning. So as I said, I actually am scheduled to attend the Coordinated Family Support Services training. Part of what I see as my responsibility in this role is to learn as much as I can about all of the opportunities, all of the program changes, all of the legislative changes that might have an impact for services. So I try to stay very well informed. And if I don't, I do some research and I follow up with families. It is.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about is actually part of what the purpose of this coordinated family services is, and working with the entire family system to talk about that life planning and the long-term care of the individual is actually part and parcel of the coordinated family services. That's why we're doing it. And that's why it was initiated, was to help a family who wish to keep their person at home for now. But what happens in the long term when mom and dad aren't here anymore? What happens next? And part of that is planning for that, what happens next. And that is actually part of the service delivery system for the agencies that will be doing coordinated family services. So just wanted to make sure you're up on that, because your agency probably already has like a way big heads up on that piece of it, and might be something of interest if you were to expand your services to then offer this coordinated service and kind of expand what you do from where you're at. You've already got the life planning stuff down, or maybe working in conjunction with an agency that does the coordinated services, but just sounds like, you know, you could easily marry on to that new service.
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate the extra background. I was looking forward to the training, so I'll make sure I take extra notes. Where I really am seeing an opportunity with the life planning workshops is with self-determination. I think I know San Diego County is pretty much close to the top as far as families that are participating and registering. But I also know that initially there was quite a bit of turnover, that families that thought they were ready to jump on board started to get through the process and realized that it was a lot more complex than they realized, and they were not as well prepared. And it just seemed like it was too much trouble, and a lot of families dropped out. I look at as life planning as an opportunity for them to have a leg up and really have given some deep thought about what that support should look like. If they're going to go self-determination, what are the critical missing services? Where are the gaps that they want to be able to fill? So when they reach the person-centered planning process and they start to translate those goals into IPP goals and then start working on their budget, they're going to come into that with a lot more clarity. They're going to have a lot more, they've given some thought to what direction that future should take and what supports are needed to build the appropriate resources. And I just think that so many families that would love to do self-determination and just can't quite make it all make sense are coming to that process from a place of, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm not getting the help I need, I'm so frustrated. That's not the mindset to go through a person-centered planning process with. That's not the mindset to bring to a reassessment of where the money needs to go. So our program, our life planning workshop series really gives them the time and the processing space to identify what is most important, where are non-negotiables, what is the direction of the future that we want our child to have, how are we working to build that, where do we see the gaps, and from that mindset, participation in something like self-determination would just be, I think, a smoother, easier, and much more effective process. I've had some conversations with the self-determination program staff here in San Diego, and they are really enthusiastic about that concept and how that might be a nice supplement and a way to help families feel like it's not going to be as overwhelming. If they've gone through my course, they have a good idea of what they want those services to look like, where they see those gaps, and what are the things that they would like to have funded, and how they can put that into identifiable, actionable goals that can be on the IPP. Do you have more questions? I've pretty much covered my spiel. I'm looking at my notes, and if I have anything else that I wanted to double check about. Oh, I just also, when I was thinking about kind of how could this be of a benefit, I know there's been a big emphasis over the last several years on underserved populations and cultural sensitivity to cultural norms in planning and service delivery. And I think, again, this is an opportunity for families to have a safe place to, in a guided way, identify what are our norms, what is our culture, what are our expectations, and how do we build the plan that's going to make sure that that's what actually happens in a way that doesn't feel like I'm having to turn down everything. I can identify what's helpful, what's positive, what's necessary, and have a much more effective conversation with my service coordinator about what that should be and what that should look like. I always, when I speak to the unit managers, and I do presentations to units, I always say, you know, you have a hard job because you have an overwhelming caseload. Everybody has different needs, and many of them have no idea what to even ask for. So you're not sure what to offer. And then you're just kind of doing these are the general things that I usually recommend. And some of them are well received and appropriate, and some of them are not. But there could be really important things that are missed because you don't know that they apply to the family, and the family doesn't know that they exist, and they're just not coming up in the conversation. So a family that's gone through life planning has a better idea of identifying where their needs are. And I speak very openly with families and tell them, always identify what you really want from a service when you're speaking to your service coordinator, because even if it doesn't exist, it becomes an opportunity to identify an unmet need. And that's how program development happens. That's how we solicit new programs. And in the 16 years that we've been doing life planning, there are many different services that didn't exist in the past. Coordinated family services is just one of the latest, but you know, adult family home agencies was not a residential, it was not a living option when I first started doing the program. That came into being shortly afterward. But there are certainly significant changes to day programs and program services and employment services connected to the HCBS waiver and final rule, and all of those impacts on what service delivery is going to look like in a lot of different environments. But I think certainly in employment, it's having more of an impact for those traditional kind of, here's our sheltered workshop. I think those programs are really having to redefine services, and having some guidance from families about what is desired, what would be helpful, is only going to help that process. So
I just want to confirm, you're already vendored right now with San Diego Regional
yes,
Center.
yes, we are. Yes.
So people, I'm assuming people just use you as a courtesy to, you know, go through a courtesy vendor process to use your services. Okay.
Yes. Yep. And our finance department is ready to hear from regional centers that are interested in doing that. They said, please just let us know who we have to work with to get that up and running.
And what service code are you vendored under? Do you know that?
I believe we're under family training.
Okay. And it's a six series.
It's 10 weeks and it's 5 workshops is what I thought.
It's 5. Let me give you the details. Our vendor number is P as in Paul, Q as in quality, 7389. There are a number of rates because we had previous rates. The one that they should select is hybrid for 5 units.
Okay. We might not have you in the system just because our
Right.
databases are not connected.
Right. But you have it when you get there. We have our calendar created for the entire month of the entire year of 2023. Okay. I'm going to put into the chat, which I will send you when I send you the recording, the website from which they can view a little bit more information about the specifics of what is included and addressed in each of the workshops. And then on the second half of the page is the registration link. And I do ask the families to identify where they are living and who their service coordinator is. So I always send an email to the service coordinator and let them know I've received a registration, just so they have the information for the vendor, for the POS as well. And if you happen to click that link and see the picture at the top, that's me with my son. Did you have other questions?
No, this was very informative. And I think when we get the recording, I will share this with our SDP department, because we actually have a whole department that deals with the SDP. So, yeah, I think this would be beneficial for them. And there may be others that are going to benefit as well. So I'll probably send this over to the consumer services side of life and let them have a watch so that they can decide if they have people, because from my perspective, I'm the community resources department. So for us, our only real role in this is going to just be asking for the courtesy vendor. That's all we would be doing. But the people who would actually utilize the service are on the other side of the regional center. So I'll make sure that they're getting this information so they have it and they can ask for it.
I appreciate that very much.
Sure.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right.
So I will send the recording to you as soon as we're done, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Nice to meet you, Wendy.
Nice to meet you too.
Bye.
Bye.